Noph Clipper, hi friends. Darth Momo here. Once again, just to kind of give a brief introduction of what I'm doing. I kind of talked about in the last one how I think that there's a lot of opinions, unfortunately, today in the Star Wars fandom that are just flat out controversial and almost invite a war on yourself just to have those opinions. There's all this discussion of, well, if you think this and you like this, you're not a true Star Wars fan, or you don't like that, you hate that. No, you're not a Star Wars fan either. I was like, you know, if you don't like the original trilogy, but you like the prequels, let's say, you're a fan of Star Wars. That's it. If you don't like the movies, but you really like the shows, you're a fan. A fan is, to be someone who likes something. That's what it means to be a fan. And it doesn't matter if you like one entry or every entry or somewhere in between. If you like something Star Wars, you're a fan of Star Wars. I would say there's different levels. There's casual fans, there's hardcore fans, there's different levels to it, right? I think that you're a different kind of fan, someone who, I watch the movies when they come out, or hey, I really love the movies, I watch them all the time, or hey, I'm into the shows, or no, I'm even deeper into the books, and sometimes I'll pick up some comics, or I take it all the way and I even read the reference books. I think there's different levels of the fandom, but I don't think you're not a fan just because you like or dislike something. Excuse me. Sorry, I know my voice is a little raspy. At the time of recording, I'm still getting over a cold. Anyway, so last video I talked about how I like The Last Jedi, and I kind of gave briefly some of my thoughts on it. I've talked in a few other review videos and ranking videos my thoughts on The Last Jedi. But there's one other movie I want to talk about that I think it's kind of controversial to like, or at least as much as I do like it. And I think what makes it even more controversial is the fact that, except for the original trilogy, I love this movie above all the other episodic movies. And some people might not like that, and you know what? That's okay. It's okay if Rise of Skywalker is my least favorite movie, and if that's your favorite movie, all the power to you. I'm genuine. That one might take some serious attempts to try to genuinely understand you for my behalf, but if it makes you happy, then I'm happy for you. Which is why, I want to kind of, again, offer not a defense, but an explanation, an understanding for people who may, be genuinely confused by this one. Why, even though I know it might be kind of controversial, a little less than 10 years ago, but maybe not as much as it will be, or maybe more so than it will be 10 years later. I just want to give my thoughts on why, despite all those, I love the Phantom Menace. And I love it more than the rest of the prequels and all the sequels. I know that's kind of a mouthful to take. And I'm going to be honest, there's different aspects of it. Again, I know this movie has problems. I know that it's not a perfect movie. And I love it despite its flaws. Like I said, Star Wars is something that flaws are just part of the franchise. That is what it is. I do think there are a couple really, really strong, good entries into the franchise, like some of the later seasons of Clone Wars, or let's say Andor. I think the franchise has moments, but all in all, it is a flawed franchise, just like this movie. But, some of the various things I do love, right? Let's say I love the characters. I love Qui-Gon Jinn. And, I wish we got more with him. Maybe not necessarily in a film, but, anytime there's a publishing story involved with him, like a little bit of Dooku Jedi Lost, not much, but a little bit, or mainly like Master and Apprentice, I pick it up and I eat it up. I love it. Tales of the Jedi that had Qui-Gon in it, I love that. He's a character that, or even his small appearances in the Clone Wars, or when he pops up in Obi-Wan, I love the character. I love his motivations, his mentality, his attitude about everything. I just love his personality. I think in the days of the prequel era Jedi, it's very hard to find a Jedi like Qui-Gon that actually still lives up to the ideals of a Jedi, and I find that really interesting, and I really like that. I love, even though I know he's not really developed as a character until the Clone Wars, I still like Darth Maul as a villain. I think he would have been cool to have, I see what Lucas was going for, right? With, Dooku and Grievous and kind of the trio of those villains. But I still would have thought it would have been cool to have Darth Maul as the main overarching villain. But like I said, I still understand what Lucas was going for. I like Jar Jar. I'm going to admit, I'll say that, like, just some brief backstory on this movie, like, because unlike The Last Jedi, I didn't really document much of this. Phantom Menace has been around for a long time by the time I got into YouTube. I started out, to me, all the Star Wars was just all Star Wars. I was a younger kid when I saw them, and I liked them all. And then as I got a little older, I kind of got, I had some friends that didn't really like them, or a friend, and, I kind of got more involved on the internet, and I kind of turned against 1 and 2. I still really liked Revenge of the Sith, but I kind of turned against 1 and 2. And I kind of became a Lucas basher. I bashed on the special editions, even though I didn't really mind them that much. And I regret that, but I did get caught up in the internet hate. And then, in lead up to The Force Awakens, I was getting ready to rewatch them all. And I happened to pick up a VHS tape at a garage sale. And I thought it was kind of cool to have a Star Wars VHS tape. And one of them was Return. I don't remember if I got 2 or 3, but I know one of them was the gold full screen Return of the Jedi, and the other was the Phantom Menace. And we popped it in with my family. My dad, he says it's his favorite prequel because of the lightsaber fight. But I watched it. I just started having a blast, and I'm like, oh, this is bad. I thought it was. And as time has just gone on, the more I watched it, the more I genuinely enjoyed the movie. I think it's got decent pacing. I think it is a fun ride. As I've gotten older and more into politics, I've very much appreciated and enjoyed the political aspect of it. And it's really not that much of the movie. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, the politics is just, it's all over the movie. And it's really not. I think Coruscant is maybe like, at least the Senate stuff, that's maybe like 15 minutes of the movie. And it's still really fascinating and fun to watch, Palpatine kind of pulling the strings. I think that the plot is still, it's just a tad convoluted, but more or less, I think the plot more or less makes sense. I think it's a lot more grounded of a movie compared to 2 and 3. I all the respect to George for all the accomplishments he made, technological speaking, with the prequels. And I know, having Attack of the Clones being the first film shot on digital was a step forward, a massive leap forward. I respect him for that, but just because I respect him doesn't mean I like the end result, or I have to. And I still think that, as time goes on, digital is not going to hold up as well as film. And because Phantom Menace was shot on film, I think it holds up visually a lot better than the next 2 prequels. It's got a better hybrid blend of CGI and practical effects as opposed to Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith basically had a green screen for everything. There were sets and green screens. That was it. There wasn't any on-location filming. Attack of the Clones had on-location filming for maybe Naboo and Tatooine, and that was it. Whereas most of Phantom Menace was shot on actual location. And I think the movie looks a lot better because of it. I'm going to be honest. Jar Jar, he grew on me, and I don't mind him. I think he's a little more focused on than he should be, and I think that's probably the biggest problem with Jar Jar. If we put him in the background a little bit more, I think he'd be a bit more receptive, positively received. But otherwise, I don't mind him. I don't think his comedy is just atrocious. I mean, I've grown on him. I think he's a meme. He gets a few laughs out of me, and I didn't like him growing up. But as time's gone on, I've learned to appreciate that. I like the grander story that Lucas was trying to tell with these movies. And I like that aspect of the Phantom Menace. I love the world building. And one other aspect I love of it too is just the nostalgia of it. I didn't grow up with it the way that someone 10 years older than me did, but I just appreciate the idea of it being the first Star Wars movie in 16 years, when no one ever thought there'd be another one. And it was this grand return. And I think in some ways it might have been a grander return than The Force Awakens, just because Star Wars still meant a lot more back then before it became just a corporate machined product like it is now. And I think that it was still a special premiere, even though it wasn't that well received. It was still a special experience, and I wish I could have been part of that. And I'd like to think that I would have been a lot more receptive to it than the average person because it was just so different, and I respect that. You know, if you strip it down to its core essentials of a story and its core basic, you can kind of draw a similar rough, generic outline between A New Hope and The Phantom Menace. But at the same time, like, the more you build upon it and the more you put the layers on the cake, the more it stands out as different. And I respect George for that. I respect what he was going for with the prequels. I think the acting is more or less decent. I think there's actors like Liam Neeson that put on a great performance, and Ian McDiarmid, of course. And then there's actors like Natalie Portman, Jake Lloyd that, yeah, they don't give a great performance, but I don't think it's bad. I think there's a lot of this movie that got overhated, and I wish that we could take that back. You know, I don't think this movie deserves universal praise. Far from it. But I don't think it deserved the universal hate it got. And it's a shame because maybe if this movie didn't get hated as much, you know, the next two prequels might have been a little more different, and we might not be in the situation with Star Wars we're in today. You know, maybe it wouldn't have been such a shot. You know, maybe Disney still would have ended up with it, maybe not. I think there's a 50-50 on that, but if they had, you know, maybe there would have been a bit more leniency to try some new things versus just make 2 out of 3 sequel films that basically rehash their, you know, the previous entry. You know, Force Awakens rehashes A New Hope, whereas The Skywalker rehashes Return of the Jedi. I think it would have changed the landscape if we had been a bit more receptive to this movie. And, you know, those are some of the reasons why I love The Phantom Menace. You know, again, it's not a perfect movie, and I do have issues with it. I have issues with almost every single entry into the Star Wars franchise, but I love this movie. I wish I could have been there when it came out, you know, being part of the hype and the reception afterwards. I really wish I could have been part of that. And there's a lot of, like I said, it's a fun ride for me. It's got a great score. I think it's got interesting characters. It's got a great setup for the trilogy. And at the end of the day, I love it. And if you hate this movie, I understand why. If you don't like this movie, I get it. If you love this movie, join the club, you know. Just because I love this movie doesn't mean I'm not a fan or that I don't know quality content or whatever. You know, it's art. It's an opinionated subject. It's not something that you can be, you know, it's not fact. And you know what? I wish everybody loved it like I did. And I'm okay with accepting the idea that not everybody does. But to me, it's an awesome movie. I love it. It's not a perfect movie. It is a flawed movie. But with my whole heart, I love this film. And I thank George Lucas for this movie and for the prequels and for Star Wars in general. You know, I hate my time period where I was a Lucas basher. There's some things I maybe would have done different. You know, there's some things I disagree with him on, but all in all, as time has gone on, I have just respected the man more and more and more. You know, I praise the man. He's a hero of mine. I love the man. And I wish that the fandom could have been more receptive to him, because I think it really did take its toll on him. But anyway, you know, just to wrap up in conclusion, I love George Lucas and his work, and I love The Phantom Menace. Thank you guys for joining in. Darth Momo out, and may the Force be with you, always. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. If you liked the video, comment down below and hit that like button. Oh, and check out some of my other videos. I'm sure you'll find them in the light.